And action. Welcome to another amazing episode of the Action Podcast. Today on tap, we have Exorcist Believer, the most anticipated next movie in the franchise. And we're also going to be reviewing The Mill, which you can see now on Hulu.
On Hulu, that's right.
Yeah, so a little bit of a shorter week, but let's get right into it. I think we're going to have a good spirited debate here on Exorcist Believer.
Correct.
Before we get into your opinion, Pete, let's go a little stats here, because again, we want to give you context. And right now,
Very important.
Exorcist has a 5.1 rating on IMDb. I tend to like IMDb ratings. I feel they are closer to what people actually feel, and so 5.1 is pretty average.
It's middle of the ground. If I see a 3-point something, I know I'm probably not going to waste my time.
Probably bad, yeah. 5.1 typically means some people like it, some people don't, right? Again, it's right in the middle. Has a 38 meta score, which honestly, for a horror film, I don't really care what critics think, so I would throw that out.
Give it a shot.
Yeah, but 5.1 tells me a lot, especially critics. When you have a movie like this, it's also important to know, this is not a standalone, right? And so typically movies like this will get compared to its predecessor, or it's not necessarily viewed in a vacuum. And I think sometimes it's important to view films in a vacuum because I think it can be deceiving. We're going to get into that though. And then the last thing I wanted to do is budget and box office. So as we shot this has made 51 million. Do you know what the budget of this one, Pete, was?
$497 billion.
I know they paid 400 million just for the rights to this film, and so they are.
Don't tell me that information, because that only is going to strengthen my opinion about this film.
Well, no matter what, they're pretty much going to have two more, which, and then the other part of that is that's not even include the production budget, which I would assume honestly it's probably going to be around 50 million if I had to guess.
Yeah.
Only because horror films are made cheap, and then a lot of the other ones we've been seeing were under 50. So
and this one didn't really display a ton of like massive special effects that would have required Lord of the Rings money. You know what I mean? So
there's no star. You're not painting any stars.
Yeah, there's nothing really extravagant, especially nowadays, where you can kind of do a lot of really cool things for a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
However, yeah.
All right, well, let's get into it, Pete. Let's get into it.
Let's get into this. This movie was directed by David Gordon Green, who we all know revamped the Halloween franchise. For all intents and purposes, he did a great job at bringing that franchise back into the forefront of sort of horror film. And I think that whether you like those movies or not, I think that he established himself as one of the really great directors of this genre, and really brought an IP back into the world of younger kids who maybe didn't know about Halloween when it first came out, and the significance of that franchise when it first came out. This movie was, like you said, 5.1. And if you want to talk about, well, this movie was in a vacuum and it needs to be treated as such, if that was the case, then I wouldn't have brought in Ellen Burstyn from the original one. And spoiler, go away from this podcast for the next 10 minutes, because I'm going to spoil some stuff right now. I'm not going to bring in the original mother from the original Exorcist if I wanted to revamp this series and make it something unique. And I certainly wouldn't bring back the original Exorcist girl, and I forget her name. Her name is slipping my mind at this point.
Linda Blair plays Reagan.
Linda Blair. And I wouldn't have brought her in at the very last 2 seconds of the movie. And then when I bring in Ellen Burstyn into this film, I wouldn't be so insignificant with her involvement in this film. She was barely in this movie, and her contribution to the story and to the outcome was zero. She was
Yeah,
an
I would agree with that.
addition to nothing. Her being in this movie did nothing. So this movie was like, you have to kind of put yourself into the position of when that first Exorcist movie came out and the significance of that movie. Not that it was so horrifying in terms of like jump scares and everything that we know today about horror films, but at the time when that movie came out, it was just like you didn't make movies like this.
Yeah,
And the subject matter behind it was, you didn't make a movie against the Catholic Church of all places, like something that sort of denounced a particular religion, especially the number one religion. And to kind of show the opposite side, that demon side of, if you believe in Jesus and God, you have to kind of believe in a devil and demons and what they can do. And we had never, as a Christian society, been introduced to what that world is like when a
yeah,
demon possesses somebody, and it's horrifying and it's shocking and it's vulgar and it's disgusting. That Exorcist movie, when it first came out, was groundbreaking for those reasons, and it's now appreciated. Wasn't appreciated as much, I think, when it first came out. Now fast forward to 2023 and we have the Exorcist Believer, and this movie, I don't know what the intent was, to be honest, because the first half of this movie was a buildup, a backstory of two girls. So we're not just going to have one possessed girl, we're going to have two possessed
yeah,
girls. And we're not going to have any reason why these two girls actually get possessed. They're just going to be wandering around in the woods someday, and then they get possessed. And the dad, who's played by Leslie Odom Jr., who's
yeah,
really good in this film, he has no idea what the fuck is going on. But meanwhile, 45, 50 minutes into this movie, all of a sudden, now we're going to get into an exorcist moment. Like in the first movie, where you have like the half of a movie of just the exorcism itself, and it's intense, and oh my God, it's vulgar, it's disgusting, and it's
yeah,
captivating. This movie finally gives you an exorcist moment, or series of sequences, and it doesn't really deliver anything at all. I mean, I could name 20 horrible exorcist movies that at least take you through an exorcist journey, even if
yeah,
the CG is bad, even if the acting is bad. There's stuff that happens during those exorcisms that is at least interesting in a way. This movie gave you none of that. This
yeah,
movie gets you up to an exorcism, and then an exorcism happens for about 5-10 minutes. Nothing really of significance sort of takes place, and then the movie ends.
yeah,
I'm I'm really disappointed in this movie, and I don't like to bash movies. There's a lot of things that you can kind of pinpoint in this movie to make it, like, there's some good stuff that you can kind of pull from it. You know what I
yeah,
mean? But overall,
yeah,
wow, what a disappointment this movie was. I'm really underwhelmed.
yeah. I mean, I would say I don't think this movie was awful, because I was in it, like, because I mean, I've seen The Exorcist before, but I saw The Exorcist like 5 years ago, and so talk about a movie that's like
A little bit of a different
underwhelming,
context, but yeah,
slightly
first time is
underwhelming when
first
you first
time.
watch it. You know, I rewatched it last night as well, just to kind of recalibrate myself. And I agree with you. Now, I love the setup of the original Exorcist, and but that movie, I think both movies, what they struggled with is, I don't know, there's not a real explanation on how they get possessed. It just kind of happens. And where
That's true.
I think where they missed the boat on this one, let's just throw out the other one now. Let's just focus on this one.
Mhm.
Is they talk about the girls. There's, again, all this is all spoiler alert, people. So don't
The
watch.
mother dies, and meanwhile, there's some like ritualistic things going
That
on.
stuff never played, but see again, that stuff never even connected at the end. Now they kind of hint that this other girl can help you talk to your mother, but then they don't really like say that or how that is even possible. Like,
Right.
why is this girl? Why is the other girl? So the main girl, she lost her mother when she was younger. Okay, good backstory by the way. Also helps with the father. So the setup I thought was okay. All right, that's good. Good
A little
setup.
long,
A little
but
long.
I understood what they were trying for. But
Yeah, a little long, but it's a
yeah,
decent
right.
setup. I'm like, okay. But then they're wanting to leave is a little minimal. It was still kind of interesting because both girls just kind of like, we don't know what happened. I
There was
thought
no
that part,
motivation behind it. There was no
no
like,
motivation.
hey, here's why we should go out to the woods today because we
Yeah.
want to do A, B, and C. There was none of that. It was just like,
Hey,
we're just gonna go.
I did some research. I found, I mean, it's honestly, again, kind of a small thing. I found some research. I think we can talk to your mother. I mean, they don't even talk about it, they just do it. And it's like, why would you, first of all, why would you go into a forest and you're a little kid? Like, I don't know. I found that part like,
But even if this friend was at that point in the relationship where it's like, listen, I know that your mother being gone is a huge part of your life. And here's why we're such good friends, where I can be the person to say,
I can help
here's
you.
how I can help you. Like, there's no establishment of even the two girls and their friendship and that connectivity
I
as
don't think
well.
they were friends, Pete. I think
But
because
okay,
the
so then
parents,
why are they both possessed? Why are they both connected in being possessed together?
no, I agree. I agree with you. That's the unanswerable question.
Sense. See, here's the problem. Here's the problem is that this is, you know, and I hate doing Western versus Eastern movie comparisons, but I'll do it in this case. Western horror movies tend to say, here's why something is happening, and we're going to scare the shit out of you. And here's the outcome. And for the most part, things are pretty scary. And you get into a story and you get into it. Eastern, specifically like Japan will come out with a movie like before we even think of it, like The Ring, The Grudge, like these sort of, and those are only the popular movies. There's like 100 other amazing Japanese horror movies that take this shit to the next level that you
Yeah.
don't even want to watch because it will mess you up forever.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why things are happening in Japanese horror films. And the reason is there's no reason. It's just because you happened to be in a specific moment at a specific time, and tough shit, you get attached to a malevolent spirit. What do they call it? I can't even say the word.
Malevolent?
A horrible spirit that wants
Yeah,
to inflict
it's just
damage upon you. Um, and American horror film doesn't really do that a lot, where things just sort of shittily happen in the spiritual world to you just because. There's always a reason for it.
yeah,
This movie didn't choose either way. It
right.
didn't choose, here's the reason why things are happening. And it wasn't like this is happening just because it's fucked up and that's horrible life in Japan, apparently,
Sure.
because things are bad there. But there's a distinction between the two sort of ideas about how to approach a horror film. This movie just kind of stayed right in the middle, and it relied on bringing in two other characters from 40 years ago that
Well,
did nothing for the
I don't
movie.
even think it relied on Reagan. It relied more on her story, but not the character
Don't put
itself.
them in there. Just don't put them in.
No, no, I agree with you, especially if you want to establish or
I
make it.
recommend I recommend seeing this movie if it comes out on streaming someday where you don't need to pay extra for it. And I would not go and see this movie.
But I will tell you this. I will tell you this, and we'll move on. But I'll tell you this. I did watch in the IMAX. I watched it at 10:30 at night. There was definitely a few times where I jumped, and I had that like uncomfortable feeling.
I'm
Now,
curious about those moments, those jump moments that you're talking about, because I don't remember jumping one time.
well, again, add IMAX and add a darkened theater. I do think adds to the element. Like I said, this is where the AMC pass I think kind of helps.
If that's what you rely on as a filmmaker for there to be the optimal
No,
environment situation for somebody to watch something and be scared, then
No, I'm with
it's
you.
an
But
accomplishment.
I did think the sound editing of this film, the editing itself was very good. They do a lot of sound cuts right into the next thing, kind of like the original. I noticed the original kind of did that as well. This kind of takes it to another level. And I did think that it really stood out to me how good the sound editing was in this film. And again,
Right.
I do think it's amplified in IMAX theater. But it did help the experience in the very beginning. It made the movie very uncomfortable. But I agree with you. At the end of the day, the story just lacked, and the connections lacked. And they kind of, I feel like if they kind of said something with how in the beginning that needs to connect to, I believe, the daughter being possessed. And I know they have the blessing
Yeah.
and the blessings and stuff like that, but then again, they don't really like that's what it was.
Seems obvious, no?
And yeah, right. And it's like, but why even do that then? Like you could have cut all that stuff.
The whole point of that first sequence, and that's why I was questioning the fact that you don't get into anything until like 30, 45 minutes into the movie where you're like, okay, I
Yeah,
think we're starting to get somewhere. I think we're starting to do this. But no offense, if this was a streaming movie, I would have turned it off after 15, 20 minutes.
yeah,
You don't, it's like when you listen to a song for the first time, you know, within the first 30 seconds, whether or not that song is a hit song or not, or whether it's not a song you want to listen to over and over again.
yeah,
Movies, you get a little bit more time. You got 15, 20 minutes to get you into, if you don't pass that 12-minute mark, typically where you're supposed to have that, oh my God, here's how we're
yeah,
going to propel our main character into the next phase and have them learn something into this world. If you don't capture that in the first couple of minutes, you're just done. If this was a
yeah, for
streaming
sure.
movie, I would have shut it off. I would have finished this movie.
And the other part I want to add is I I liked some of the setup with the dad, but
That
then
was great.
they didn't pay off. They didn't pay it off because he was actually like he said, I don't believe blah blah blah, but then he was also the guy that believed the most. So it's kind of they're kind of contradictory a little bit.
Was he the believer in this whole scenario, or was it the woman who became the priest who wasn't a priest? Was it the priest that didn't want to be involved that all of a sudden
I
became
liked her
involved?
story,
Like,
by the way. I did like her story. I did
yes,
like
but
her story.
that was 4 minutes of screen
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah. Again, I don't think did a good job of.
Who was the believer?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. I mean, I would say it's the husband, but
Yeah, so why call it the believer?
no, I wouldn't call it that either.
The Exorcist believer. So
Yeah, no,
who's
I'm
the
with you.
believer? Who
I don't think
believes?
that's a good title either. But
Nobody
uh,
believes.
so,
I
guys,
believe this movie is a pass.
I think we. Well, let's say I would say go see it in if you can see it in IMAX. I thought it was an enjoyable experience, but
Stay home and see The Mill, which is coming up next on the Action Podcast.
yes. So let's move on to The Mill, which you can see now on Hulu, and that stars Lil Rel Howery. And I want to hear your opinion first on this one, Pete. I know normally I go second, but or first, but
Ooh, yeah. No, I mean, I was so happy to see this movie. There was nothing behind this movie. I had no idea it was coming out. I had no idea that Hulu was even going to, because like Apple will promote Flowers of a Killer Moon or Killers
yeah,
of a Flower Moon, whatever it's called. They will promote that movie and put it on their site so that you see it for a year before it
yeah,
comes out. You know something's coming.
yeah.
Hulu doesn't do
It
that.
does nothing. I'm
Um,
noticed that too.
yeah, and you were the one actually that told me, "Hey, there's a movie called The Mill on Hulu,"
Yeah,
and
I
check
just need to check
it
Hulu.
out. And I'm like, "Yeah, maybe I'll check it out." I don't know. I'm so busy. I'm
Well,
so important.
what's important to this is a side note for viewers here. What's important to note is that Hulu is basically the arm of Disney that will air. You know how they acquired 20th Century Fox and now it's 20th Century Studios. So they
Right.
have a library of films that were supposed to be released during the pandemic time and stuff like that. So they have a bunch of films that are basically like made and that they did never released in theaters. And so I believe that's why Hulu has like they're able to kind of throw out so many movies is because they have 20th Century
Mm,
Studios
mm.
their library. So that's why we're seeing movies like The Mill and things like that that are good. That
That would make sense.
yeah. Well,
That would
some
make a
smart
lot of
guy, Pete.
sense.
Yeah.
So the premise of this movie is the mill that with Lil Rel Howery, who I just absolutely adore. You've seen him in Get Out. You've seen him in Judas and the Black Messiah, Good Boys, Bird Box. I think he was even in. But this guy is, he gives you a range of dramatic but mostly comedic
Yeah.
presence. You know, he is a funny guy, and even in serious situations, he acts funny. He's like me in real life. Like even if something's serious, like I try to be joking and try to keep things light to
Yeah, yeah,
kind
that
of
nails that
soften.
nails who you are. You're
Yeah,
exactly like Lil Rel Howery.
I'm just like him, minus the absolute success
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
money that he has. However, so this movie starts with him waking up in this enclosed space, four walls. There's a mill in front of him with a big wheel that he has got to push around eventually. No idea why. We have no idea why. We have no idea the purpose. We have no idea what the goals are. We have nothing. There's no backstory. It starts with him trapped immediately. So
Yeah.
you are right away feeling this anxiety while you're watching this movie. And he is portraying somebody like you would portray, who just wakes up in this scenario where there's no escape, there's no idea, there's no nothing, there's no information. You don't know what to do. How do I get out of this? Why am I here? You have zero idea. He plays that part to perfection.
Yeah.
And you feel it in that whole time. First half of this movie, I swear to God, I was like, I was uncomfortable, I was unsettled, and I had to see what was going to play out next.
Yeah.
And then they have a couple of like little things that happen. They've got this little neighbor in the next prison over, who is he really a prisoner? Is he not a prisoner? Is he just there as a thing, a
Yeah.
distraction,
Decoy. Yeah.
a decoy? You don't know, and you still didn't even know. But you hear all of these really horrific things, audio wise. You don't see them ever happen, but you hear
Yeah.
some absolute horrible things happening to people. And then you see his reactions to listening to that horror. And then eventually you get towards the end of the story. And I'm going to let you talk about your side of it before I throw in the spoiler and talk about the ending of this movie. But he did a phenomenal job.
No, we're not going to talk
I
about. We're not going to talk about the ending.
We're not.
No,
Okay.
because it's streaming. I want
Then
people to see it.
this is amazing, and you should watch it until the ending. This is a brilliant movie, and it is something that if you and your loved one, not a child, but you and your significant other wanted to watch something really amazing, and have a great experience watching it, The Mill is up your alley. This is a fantastic movie. I had a great time because I was so uncomfortable the entire time. Lil Rel Howery portrayed himself as somebody that you just wanted him to succeed in the worst kind of way. You wanted him to get out so badly.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many people can pull off an acting role like that. He crushed.
Yeah. So this movie did get a 5.3 IMDb rating. So just kind of like we
Very
mentioned
low
before.
for me.
Yeah. I mean, some of the reviews
Low.
I'm reading there, it was not. I think the best comp for me, and it's a TV show, but it's very kind of similar premise is Severance. Where
I
it's
don't know.
I know there's another one, but I do think it's one of these very simple concepts that's easy to like execute, if that makes sense. And it, let's call it a genre film for lack of a better word. But I think that's what I think makes it enjoyable. It kind of knows what it is and keeps it kind of simple and basic, and that's what I think makes it work. And again, like it holds your attention just so it's like, okay, I kind of gotta see where this is going.
Just ask the question, a
Yeah,
big corporation, if they have too much power, what would they ultimately do? Especially with
yeah,
the emergence of AI and Chat GPT, and
yeah,
like what does that future world sort of look like? And this
yeah,
gives you a glimpse of it, at least somebody's idea.
yeah. Even like The Island is another kind of good example. an old Michael Bay film, 2005, with Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson. If you haven't seen that movie, at least go see it for Scarlett Johansson. But it's not the same premise, but it's a similar in genre.
I would liken it in a way, if I may. I would liken it to the original Saw in a way, not for its horror aspect, but because you're in one setting the entire movie. It's very much like if you took a play and you decided to make a movie out of it. Like there's one setting and you have to accomplish a goal in order to continue forward, right? So in that sense, I would liken it to Saw, the first one, but without the visual horrors of that film.
So again, I think this movie does a good job of holding your attention, so that at least you kind of want to see it pay out. And again, like we've always mentioned with streaming films, I think that's kind of the key is, can you hold my attention while I may or may not be distracted? And then do I really want to finish it?
What's the payoff?
Yeah.
Was it worth it?
Yeah.
Can you say whether or not it was worth it or not, or do we not say whether it's worth it or not?
No, I would say check this movie out for sure. I think this is a solid streaming film.
I'm talking about the payoff. I'm talking about the payoff. Would you say the payoff was worth it or not? Without spoiling.
Yeah. I wasn't blown away, but I wasn't like,
I would argue no, but I could see why it would be for some.
Yeah.
I really wish we could spoil this movie.
I think it's 50-50. No, again, if it wasn't streaming, I would say let's spoil it. But again, use your best judgment.
Tell us what you think. Comment below and let us know, was this a payoff at the end of this movie? This is a very easy watch. Go into Hulu, watch it. Hour and a half later, you comment down below. Tell us what you think.
Yes, I love that. Awesome. So with that, Pete, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Next week, so there's really no wide releases next week. There might be a streaming or two.
Why is that?
Because I think it's Exorcist Believer. I don't know.
No, why aren't we seeing any new movies next week released in the theaters? Because every theater is booked up with the Taylor Swift extravaganza concert experience of a lifetime.
No,
apparently.
You're totally right.
For the next 2 weeks, it is consuming every single screen.
Yeah. So you're going to hear the review from two middle-aged men. We're going to watch Swift in theaters. And so
I'm sure Swifties are going to be really eager to hear our thoughts on it. My daughter is a huge Swiftie, and so I'm into her music. Like I get it. Like I'm with it.
Yeah.
So I would probably enjoy this more than you, possibly.
No, I honestly, I saw Pink in concert for work, and I enjoyed it. I thought Pink had put on a great show, and if it's anything like as good as Pink's show, I think I'll have a good time. So I'm actually kind of looking forward to it. I think I've heard it's an amazing show, so I'm ready, and we'll review that one.
Dude, we've never had a movie like this to review, so I'm actually kind of excited about it.
Yeah, for sure. And then the other thing we'll be reviewing is The Burial. Now, The Burial is limited release. I don't know if that means it's going to be going to streaming like a Netflix, and it's the only reason why they're releasing it in theater is no, they changed that rule. I forget. But it's only playing. Pete's already seen it.
Yeah, this is Jamie Foxx, Tommy Lee Jones, Alan Ruck. You know a lot of the actors and actresses in this film, and I will just say, go see it.
Yeah. All right. Well, that will wrap it up for this. Thanks again for joining us. Make sure you can comment below. Give us your thoughts. We want to hear your thoughts about some of these movies, why you agree with us, why you disagree with us. I think we're pretty fair. So,
people
we're not.
People tell me all the time, oh my gosh, I listen to your show. I have so many thoughts. And I'm like, well, just make a comment, will you?
Yeah, make a comment.
Just comment.
Don't be an asshole. Comment below. Help us out.
Tell me.
Yeah. And we'd appreciate that. But make sure like, subscribe, share, help us grow. We appreciate everybody that does comment and does subscribe and listen. And with that, Pete, that is a cut. Thanks, guys.